Lucas, thank you very much. Lucas talking about the bunker buster. He mentioned it's fairly new. It's been in our arsenal for about 2 years. Again, first tested in May of 2024. 5,000-pound bombs designed to destroy hardened, concrete, reinforced targets that I'll show you on the map in a moment here that help protect some of the missile sites there in the Strait of Hormuz. They can fly now, the 5,000-pound bunker busters, on F-15, so the fighter jets have much greater agility than we have seen from some of the long-range B-1 bombers coming out of Missouri. This is what CENTCOM gave us, all right? This image is the Strait of Hormuz. Show you it on a different map. This is the northern edge of Hormuz. This is the concern now for getting oil through there. What the president's talked about, allies helping out there so far, they have not given way on that. We'll see whether or not that changes throughout the day. But these are the missile locations that these bunker busters went after, all right? To date, you've got 7,000 targets struck on behalf of the U.S. and Israel, 6,500 combat flights, and you got 100, 100 Iranian vessels that belong to their navy that have been damaged or destroyed. That is significant, too. And so is this now. These are a dozen leaders in Iran's government, okay, that have been eliminated in the past 2 weeks. The Ayatollah, and then yesterday, the commander of the besieged. That's the interior militia group that really controlled the country within various Iranian cities throughout the country of Iran. The Ali Larijani, who was eliminated yesterday. And then the big news from overnight. This is Ismail Khatib. He's the Minister of Intelligence. Some suggest that there some reporting in the Wall Street Journal that once they started to destroy locations where a lot of these leaders got together, they would literally camp out in tents overnight in force, and some of the Israeli and U.S. intelligence have led them there to eliminate some of them. But let's think about the Minister of Intelligence right now as we're bringing Karoline Leavitt from the North Lawn. And Karoline, welcome to our coverage. We got a number of things we want to run through, so thank you for your time today. First of all, on Khatib, does the United States, or does the White House believe that he was responsible for assassination attempts on President Trump?
Well, I won't comment on that intelligence, Bill, but certainly this was a known terrorist. And U.S. intelligence, combined with Israeli intelligence, our great partners in this effort, is the best in the world. And of course, this man is no longer with us here on Earth, and that's a good thing for the United States, and it's a good thing for the American people who have long been threatened by this rogue terrorist regime. We're now on day 18 of this operation, and some updated numbers for you from CENTCOM this morning. We've now actually struck more than 7,800 targets. More than 120 Iranian naval ships are at the bottom of the ocean, have been sunk by our great military. So the objectives of Operation Epic Fury have been clear from day one, and the sheer lethality and power of the U.S. Armed Forces is on display every single day as they continue to meet these objectives and obliterate the rogue Iranian regime and their ability to threaten the United States of America, our allies, and the Middle East.
Karoline, there was news yesterday when Joe Kent, who works for Tulsi Gabbard over at the DNI, a political appointee, said he could no longer stay in his job. He was resigning over the Iran war. So he had objections. When is the last time he saw President Trump?
It's been a while. It's been a while since the president has seen him here at the White House. It's been a while since he's been involved in the process of the presidential daily briefs, and he's been actually present for the president's intelligence briefings. This was an individual who was not involved in any of the discussions pre-operation and throughout this operation. I think the president views it as deeply unfortunate that this individual, who the president gave the privilege of working for the administration, put out this resignation on government letterhead with many falsehoods throughout, essentially accusing the president of being manipulated by foreign governments. That's laughable and it's insulting. President Trump has been remarkably consistent on this issue of Iran for many, many years. Long before he ever entered politics, he has always said Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. So anyone who works here should be well aware of the president's intentions and his peace through strength agenda and his willingness to use the United States military to achieve peace if and when necessary, as we have seen throughout Operation Epic Fury.
There are some reports that the White House considered him to be someone who was leaking. And of course, that's obviously no good when you are at the White House. You don't want somebody like that in the administration. He was never fired over that. His boss, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, will be testifying this morning. Does the president still have full confidence in her?
He does, yes, and we look forward to watching the director's hearings today. And I think that anyone who has been suspected of leaking or is proven to be a leaker will not be welcome in this administration. I know that for a fact because I've heard the president say it myself. There are investigations underway into leakers in this administration, and people will be held accountable for that. It's unacceptable and it cannot be tolerated.
As you just heard, we told our viewers we're watching both of those hearings and they may make news, and we'll bring them headlines when they happen. On a truth that was sent out earlier today, 7:22 a.m. Eastern Time. I wonder what would happen if we, quote, finished off what's left of the Iranian terror state and let the countries that use it, we don't, be responsible for the so-called Strait. That would get some of our non-responsive allies in gear and fast, President DJT. Has there been any movement overnight on behalf of our allies that has softened their position about going through the Strait of Hormuz?
Not overnight, but the president and his team, especially Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio, continue to be in touch with their counterparts in Europe and, of course, our allies in the Arab and Gulf region to step up and do more to help the United States in securing the Strait of Hormuz. This is to their benefit, more so than it is to the benefit of the United States. Thanks to President Trump, we are a net exporter of energy. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz for our energy here at home. For the American people, of course, we want the Strait to be open for the global oil market and to stabilize prices and bring them down again. And we have options the military has options to continue doing that. But the president is right to call on our allies to step up to do more. You know, one of President Trump's guiding principles is fairness. And he has long called out NATO for being what he believes an unfair alliance for the American people, the American taxpayer, and our U.S. armed forces. You look at some of the trade deals with our NATO allies. The president has worked to renegotiate and reset those to make them more fair for the American people and American workers. You look at the fact that the United States has thousands of troops on our allies in NATO's soil. We're paying these countries billions of dollars, and our troops on their soil serves as a deterrent for them. And the president wants the American taxpayer and our American military to be treated fairly. He feels sometimes with NATO they are not, and he's right to call that out, and he's right to call on them to step up and do more, especially when reopening the Strait benefits them even more than it does the United States of America.
There are troubles here at home as well. The Department of Homeland Security remains shut down, and Mark Wayne Mullen has his hearing. We're going to hear from him in a moment. But there were reports that the Democrats had come forward with some sort of an idea or a deal to move forward. We're going to talk to a woman who works at the TSA in the next block, and I'm curious, what would the president want her to know about his attempts to try to get a deal done? And will we see some movement on that today if the Democrats put something that is reasonable?
Well, unfortunately, we're on day 33 of this Democrat-led shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, and they have been anything but reasonable. The White House has worked in good faith with Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill to reopen the department. We've offered them multiple binding and substantive offers to reopen DHS, including some changes to the way immigration enforcement in this country takes place. And they have rejected every single one of those offers. They've asked for concessions. We'll give them a concession, and then they say, oh, wait, that's actually not a real concession. So unfortunately, these are people who are not negotiating in good faith. You actually had a Democrat lawmaker from Virginia yesterday say that this Democrat-led shutdown is, quote, hurting the wrong people. It's hurting the American people. More than 100,000 workers going without pay. This is the third time TSA agents have been impacted by a shutdown over the last 6 months because of Democrats on Capitol Hill. It's just despicable. President Trump has been clear since day one. Fund the Department of Homeland Security. Stop playing partisan politics with the American people's paychecks.
Okay, last topic here. The SAVE Act. It appears inevitable that it does not have the 60 votes in the Senate. On that note, back to Truth Social, the president said this just yesterday. He said the Save America Act is one of the most important and consequential pieces of legislation in the history of Congress and America itself. I will never, ever endorse anyone who votes against Save America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. How big of a defeat would this be for the Trump agenda if it does go down the way we expect?
Well, Bill, I do think President Trump would reject the premise of your question that this bill is doomed to fail. He's fighting every day to get the votes needed to pass this country-saving legislation, the Save America Act, which has some of the most common sense proposals ever proposed by either party on Capitol Hill. Voter ID, who could be against it? 90% of Americans support it. No mail-in ballots, which we know create a tremendous amount of fraud in our electoral system, with common sense exceptions, of course, for those in our military and others. No more transgender mutilation surgeries for young minor children. Again, a 90% issue supported by the American people. No men in women's sports, and proof of citizenship to vote. These are common sense proposals that the President of the United States supports because he knows the vast majority of the people in this country support. And every senator on Capitol Hill, both Republican and Democrat, frankly, would be wise to vote for this legislation because it's in the best interest of their constituents and our country to do so. We're working with the Senate on this daily, and the President is a fighter. As you know, he's not going to give up the fight on this one.
Just going back to the start of the first part of that answer, are you predicting victory then?
I'm not predicting victory, but I'm not predicting defeat either. I trust in President Trump and his ability to wheel and deal with senators on Capitol Hill, and he's not given up on this piece of legislation, let me tell you.
Well, I admire the craft, Karoline. Very good. I want you to. Thank you for being
Thanks for
here.
coming
I know
on.
you have a sober occasion this afternoon as you head to Dover. So our thoughts and prayers with you and all the family members that are hurting today. Thank you.
Ours too. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.